Hello, and welcome. Today we wanted to do a interview slash behind the scenes look at like the making of the impact driven entrepreneur company, like what we are here to do, our mission, vision, like really just ground you and really show you guys like um what is the point, right? Like where this brand came from, our story, and all of that. So welcome. And then we have Corey, who's going to be interviewing me. And she is a coach that works inside of the Impact Formula program, as well as she does project management and a lot of other things. And so if you want to introduce yourself too, because you did start as a client. So if you want to tell people like about your business, that would be awesome too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like you just said, I started as a client. I was a follower of yours through, I can't remember which challenge I came through now, but I was looking for a business coach after coming off of a pretty disappointing experience. And like, I remember the first conversation I had with you, and it was just so real. And I felt like I had made that connection that I was lacking. And I don't think I signed up right away after that. Or maybe I did. Now let's see, I can't remember. But
No, our first conversation you didn't. I think we had 2 calls. Yeah.
And that was just it. And I was still hesitant about it because I had that bad experience with me. But then it just got to the point and I was like, well, you know what? Let me be open-minded about it because your approach seemed different to me. And then I think just the value that I got from the free training, that was huge. It's like, well, if this is what I'm getting free, then when I start paying, I'm going to get exponentially more. So, and I didn't even see, I'm lucky my significant other fiance, he's not on Facebook, so he'll never know. But I signed up for coaching without talking to him about it because it was one of those things like I was trying to run my business, trying to run my blog, trying to do all of these things. And we had made this agreement that if I couldn't make it profitable within, I think, a certain amount of time, go out and get a real job. And I didn't want to do that because I don't like the thought of being tied to a real job. I don't want to have to design my family's life around my job. I wanted it to be the other way around. So I told myself I was going to do it, and I did. And that honestly has probably been one of the best things I've ever done for myself, not just for my business, but for myself, because my experience with the business has been equal parts, if not more parts, transformational on a personal level than it has on a business level. Because I had all of these different ideas. You remember, you know how I am.
Yes, I remember.
And I had all these things, and I was always just focus on the one thing until you can, make that the one thing. And I was so resistant to it because I thought, well, I'm going to keep doing it my way. I'll maybe try it Mariana's way. I'm not going to tell her that I'm not trying it her way, but I'll. And then I kept getting frustrated because nothing was working. And I look back on like, of course it wasn't working. I was still doing it the wrong way. Or I was still doing it the way that I thought would be the best way when really it wasn't. So when I finally started leaning into what you were telling me after so many months of my way or the highway.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone goes through their resistance process, right? You're like,
some of us,
I don't know, Mariana just said to do that, but I'm not doing any of that.
Right? And what came back for me was always Mariana built her business at the bedside of her preemie daughter. And I've shared this, I think, in my introduction. It was somewhere, but I have almost 20. He's going to be 22 later this month. He was born 3 months premature. And he was in the Albany Med NICU for almost 4 months. I was 16 years old. And
Wow.
yeah. And the night he was born, I was told it was like he has a 50-50 chance of survival. So that was a roller coaster of just being forced to really grow up. I was no longer just a kid, I was a mom and having to be responsible for myself. So that's to it ties into the whole story, I swear. um, but that was one of the main reasons why I think I got drawn to you, because of your story with your daughter. And my second child, can't really call her a child either, but she's going to be 19 in July. She's autistic. She was also born premature. So that was the biggest motivator for me behind wanting to make this all successful and wanting to make it all work. Because I think I knew, even though I had all these ambitions, like I wanted to be a psychologist, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. But trying to wrap my head around how all the logistics were going to work with college classes or with certifications or anything else that would have taken away from intentional action in building a sustainable business, I just could not fathom how it was going to work. So, which was another big thing that you helped me with, because I remember saying to you once, it's like, well, I don't have certification, I don't have this, I don't have that. And you said it didn't matter. And it's like, yeah, it really doesn't. I have experience. I'm like, you can't get that in a classroom. You can't get that in a textbook, that life experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful.
So those are my two big motivating factors for doing a lot of what I do.
Right. Yeah. And then you went through the program. You were in it for like over a year, and then you applied to be a coach, and then here we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's been fantastic. It's been such a joy having you on. So, and you run a very, successful blog and business with your own brand, Gory at Home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just so everybody knows, right? Like,
yeah. And I have the,
you're always so modest. I'm always like telling everybody about your brand.
And I have the ambition, because I see how I can schedule it out. And that was just the other thing. It's like, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. But I make the time, and I find the time, even if it's within 10, 15, 20, 30, however long I have to schedule out things, to repurpose things. So right now I'm actually in the middle of planning for separating my autism content into its own brand, and putting it onto its own platform because of the way that you run your business. So that's been hugely inspiring. It's like, she can do this, I can do this.
Yes. And that's really what I want everybody to take away from this today. It's not like the Mariana show, the pity party either. It's just like, dude, if I can do this, there is no reason anybody else can't do it. Right?
Exactly.
Like, there's been every reason I can't do it. And I think how you, like, as you asked me the questions and we move through it, like, just think about how I looked at the things. How did I think about the things? Because that is the deal breaker for yourself. Right? Like, exactly. Like NICU could have happened and I could have said, nope, I'm not doing this. Goodbye. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll just, I don't know, not work, be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I had that option. My husband makes great money, right? My ex-husband, like, he made great money. I could have just been a stay-at-home mom. Totally. Didn't want to be, right? Like, and that's okay. Right? Like, right. Whatever your path is.
Yeah. That's just it too. It was just that whole, I can choose to do some things, or I can choose to do certain things. Like, and when I say things like that, at one point I was signed up for, I think, like 3 or 4 different network marketing companies. I don't know if I've told you this part of my story.
No, but I've never heard it.
Okay. Yeah. At one point I was signed up for all of those because I was convinced, I was like, I'm going to make that work, or I know how to make it work. And maybe I did, but at the same time, it was also that realization, like, that's not my business. That's not my company. I'm just representing them.
Right.
And I still had that, like, that desire in me. It's like, I want to make my own business and I'm going to make it work because I have the know-how.
Right.
I just need someone to help, like, push me in the right direction.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And that's, yeah. So I think too, because this whole week we've seen all of these case studies. This was the other reason I wanted to do this with you. Like, this whole week we've seen all the case studies with all of our amazing people. And I know you've done interviews on the past with other podcasts, but you've never done one on your own podcast because you never had anybody. You'd have
not
to
in the Impact-Driven Entrepreneur. I did it on back when it was called the Mom Entrepreneur. I don't know if you know this, and I don't know if the old episodes are even there anymore, because that was like the old brand. But yeah, I've never done an interview.
Oh, speaking of my daughter, she's coming downstairs.
All right.
So she gets a little bit loud. That's if I have to mute.
That's okay.
Oh, she just turned off the light. Okay, yeah. So what is your story? Like, why? Why did you want to do all this? What got you into this?
Okay. So, like, just like you, like, the entrepreneur bug is like since I was a kid. Literally, like, I came from Venezuela to the US, literally one suitcase in hand. Each of us was allowed one.
Where's the chocolate and popcorn?
It's up. It's really high up on the fridge, but you're not allowed to just eat that, honey. No, you can eat. No, you can bring me the bowl and you can bring me the chocolate popcorn, and I'll give you some.
It's so.
That whole bag will be gone. I can't right now. Ask Adrian. He can reach up there. Ask Adrian. Okay. So, don't you reach up there. Ask Adrian.
Pause this.
Ask Adrian to help you. Okay, sorry guys. So, I don't think that's gonna fare over very well. All right, so, oh my God. Okay, hold on. So, so anyways, the entrepreneur bug hit me like immediately. So I came to the country, one suitcase. Each of us was allowed one suitcase. And, and then as soon as I was here, I was like, you don't know the language. You're trying to learn that. It's paused. It's paused. Go get Adrian to help you.
No, I can.
All right. So, you don't know the language. You don't know what's what. Your reality is like swept up from under you. And so I said, oh man, like, what am I doing? Right. And so I had encountered people that helped me. I encountered people that really took advantage of that. I had encountered really just the wide gamut, right?
Yeah.
And so I eventually just, I found a friend and we were like great friends, and we decided we were going to start this little business, and it was collecting cans. So we lived in student housing. So the reason we came was because my parents had university visas to study and get their doctorate degrees. My parents are very, very smart, super intelligent. Like, they both had master's degrees in Venezuela, came here. You had to start all over. So they started all over and got, my dad got a doctorate. My mom got another master's. So that, just fucking brilliant. Okay. And that you could never even compare type of thing. So then what ended up happening is we were living in student housing. And I said, there's opportunity here. There's like all these people drinking.
Yeah.
And these cans are worth money.
Right.
So um, sure, honey, sure. So then I said, okay, let's do it. So we started going around and purchasing the cans. Can't remember if it was like 2 or 3 cents or whatever we were paying less than what we would get. And so that was the first, like, I don't know, type of thing that I did. And then from there on, you know, like I was 7 at that time, or probably 8 by then. And, you know, you just do the gamut, right? The lemonade stand, the babysitting, the crafts, like everything under the sun. Yeah. And so I did that for years and years and years. And when I went into school, I was like, I wanted to get a degree in psychology, which is what I did. But what I was very frustrated by is like, I couldn't practice psychology until I went all the way to doctoral level. And I was like, this is kind of annoying. And looking at how much money I was going to make, I was like, this is kind of disappointing as well. Right. And so I was like, well, let me go the nursing route, because I absolutely love neurology. Read my first neurology book at age 16. And just, I was always like, whenever I was learning in the neurology based classes, I was like so into it. So I went and I got my degree in nursing so I could like work right away, get experience hands-on. My first job, basically I went to the hospital manager. This was like sales in action. I went to the, like, who does this? I didn't go on their website. This is like career advice right here. If you want a job, go do this. I didn't go to their website. I didn't do anything. I just went to the manager and I said, here's my resume. I really want this job. This is going to be exactly what I want. And she created a job for me. It was the first time that they ever took new grads into the ICU. And I got my first job in neurosurgical ICU. Literally brain surgery in the ICU. First time that they had ever done that. And they created, there was other ICUs that were doing similar, but they created these jobs because of crazy students like me were like knocking on their door. So a year later, maybe like 2 years later, I got injured in my back. Like my back, I injured it so bad, lifting a 400-pounder intubated patient. And so I was like, this is really difficult, grueling work. And so I said, the more I use my brain, the more I think at a higher level, the more money I'll be able to make, right? Like the doctor makes more money, the manager makes more money, and they're using their brain more rather than the body. So that's what I started doing. And I climbed up the corporate ladder. Eventually I was taking on like all the clients that were, or the patients that were transplant donors. And so I went into, that's like how I started to get out of hospital bedside work. And then I ended up climbing the corporate ladder, was asked to oversee 3 hospitals, and my preemie daughter was born. It was like one of those things, like we talked with Christina earlier about how like there's the entrepreneurial bug is not going to go away. No. In fact, it's going to hit you like a bus. And that's what happened with me, because once my daughter was born, it was like, you can't go back. Like I had to be at the bedside. I forgot to tell the part, like when I started working at the neuro ICU, I started buying rental properties. Minor detail. But like, that's what you do when you're single. Minor detail. But like, that's what you do when you're like a single girl, you don't have children, and you're making a decent salary, and then you can take all this overtime. So I was making a great salary at that neuro ICU job, and I just like invested it, you know what I mean? So that's what I did. And so when everything happened with my daughter, I was like, well, I've been able to make money in other ways before, right? Like, let's keep going in that direction. And I already had a very side hustle coaching gig that I just leaned into, right? I was like, I'm going to do this. And literally just working from the hospital bedside with the pump on, because SNCU, right? So, and that's how it all began. And and then it slowly started to gradually go more towards alignment for me in terms of like, okay, I really was, people started coming to me like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? How come you didn't have to go back to a job? And then I started teaching like productivity for moms. And then I started teaching more and more business. And then eventually I felt completely way more aligned with the business side because that's what I was doing. Right. And so that just felt like so much more me. That's what I had been doing since I was a kid, really. But then also in the hospital administration side, I had such great experience that in the online space they didn't have. And so again, you see the gap, you see what's missing, and you fill it. And so we've been doing that for, probably like 4 years now. And with that, so the Impact Driven Entrepreneur brand was born when I was at a live event and I had this inkling to completely rebrand, but I wasn't sure what direction I was going to go. And I was noticing like that I had taken male clients, and the clients that I took that were men, the only reason I accepted them was because they had a mission that was to help people. And that's where like the term Impact Driven Entrepreneur came from. We eventually trademarked it. So if you see it out on the internets, let us know. But so that's how it came about. And then, and so I guess when you asked the question, it was like, why did you do this? And the answer for me is like, as an immigrant who came from another country, I was not allowed to work until after I was already in college. That time when I was able to, work, it was just like this gift and privilege that I think so many people take for granted. Like the ability to earn your own money. Now, I was still, granted, besides babysitting jobs and all those entrepreneurial things, like that ability to make consistent money was a privilege. And that really, like, that's what we talked about this morning and why we wanted to do this interview, because it is rooted on way more than just making money. It is a privilege. Yeah, it is a privilege to be able to show, like, to make money. And then for me, it's like teaching a man to fish. It's like everything. If I can teach this, then that is like one of the most powerful things that I could do in anyone's life. And I even just like want to cry when I think about that moment that I got my first job and was able to work for myself and create some freedom for myself, how powerful that was, and what like doing that for the future people and then future generations just like lights me up.
Yeah. And I think that's just it too, is that one of the other reasons I wanted to do this, whether or not my youngest daughter goes into the same entrepreneurial thing, because she keeps telling me she's either going to go into art or she's going to go into science. Like, all right, you'll make more money with science, but if you want to do art, do art. That's you.
Adrienne, close the door.
So with her, it's like, I want to show her that if she has those dreams in her to do things, nothing is going to stop you except for you.
Right.
And
totally.
It doesn't matter what circumstances are in your way. It doesn't matter what obstacles are in your way. And the student housing thing too, I have to laugh about that, because when my mom was in law school, we lived in the student apartment complex.
Like, how many more commonalities can we find? Because they're like everywhere.
Well, I didn't do the entrepreneurial thing then, but I was in Girl Scouts, and I earned highest cookie badge because all of the starving law school students during final exams, they wanted cookies.
Yeah.
No, I love that story though, because it's like I said before, the NICU story especially is what really resonated with me, with your story.
Yeah, and I think like everyone has gone through something, right,
Yeah.
that they can use as either the reason or the motivator.
Yeah.
But for me, like, there's no way in hell I'm leaving this baby, right?
Mhm.
Like, it like Mama Bear came out. I don't know.
Right.
No one is going to um, get me away from this baby.
Yeah.
Uh, and like that became really strong for me.
That's, like I said, with my daughter, because in a 9 to 5 job, I wouldn't have the freedom to be able to be places for her. And I need to have that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. And like, even we were talking too, like, you know, we don't know. I don't know if COVID was here in February, but we had
right.
a horrible flu. And then we got another illness on top of that. And then we were super sick for literally like 2 months. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, like, I could not hold down a job right now. Like,
Yeah.
my kids have been sick and myself for 2 months straight.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, those are the kinds of things that, like, when you have a business and of course, and you have a team, your business can keep going. If you've built your business appropriately, like, you can keep going. It's not like the end of your visibility and everything, right? Like, posting did not stop. That's like the fantastic thing, right? We've continued to publish podcasts,
Yeah.
not at the ferocious level we're at right now, but we did it, right?
Yeah.
Every week. And so it's really important, I think, like, to have that infrastructure, the people, the processes and systems. And I did spend also the end of last year, like a good 2 months, just working on systems because I was preparing for the hiring boom that we were going to do in January, and we have, and that's been fantastic.
Yeah. So having that, absolutely, like having the systems, the processes in place, that knowing that your business is still going even without you having to be so hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's one of the other reasons that people start to burn out from things. It's like they always have, the business is completely dependent on them. Like, if they aren't there, then the things aren't going to happen.
Right.
And I know for me, that was one big thing too. It's like, well, I have to, and I think I remember talking to you about this. It's like, well, I still have to go in and micromanage, or I still have to go in. I have such an inner control freak. But then seeing how you've done it and how you set things up, it's like, well, again, it goes back to that. If she can do this, I
Yeah.
can do this.
Totally.
It's just having that, setting people up for that success. It was what I loved.
Yeah, and I want to say too, like, when I talk about the impact of an entrepreneur brand, it's really important for me, like, for people not to think like I'm the impact of an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
Like, you all are the impact of an entrepreneur, right? Like
I'm an
your shirt
impact-driven
says.
entrepreneur.
Like, you all are, because you're the one going out there and making your business happen because of the impact you want to make in the world, the legacy you want to make, right? I'm just only like kind of like going first and feeling a shit ton first to give you guys all the lessons that I am experiencing on the journey, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not the impact driven entrepreneur, right? Like, that's you guys.
You're giving us the formula to become the impact-driven entrepreneur. That's how I like to look at it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the systems. So while we're on that topic, what is your impact goal?
So I want to help 1 million people. Of course, it's not 5. But I want to help 1 million people, and really that's where, like, the work that we've been doing behind the scenes has been, how can we really impact the ideal client, our true ideal client avatar, like at the root of who they are, and help them in ways that they've never been helped before, right? And for us, that means, you know, like people who have gone through similar things as me, right? Like people who've gone through tough times, who've, you know, doubted themselves, struggled, like all of that, like that is my person. And really, how can we help them with both? And for me, a lot of it. So like when I look at my mission, it's like, it's to help coaches to become thriving, impactful CEOs. And ultimately that means ending suffering for them, because I think too much is happening where there's unnecessary suffering, and unnecessarily suffering is caused by your brain.
Which was another reason I got drawn, because of the whole neurology. Like when I was taking my human bio class, I got so bored with so many things, but then they hit on like the neurology, the nervous system. Is like, oh, what's this?
Exactly. And that's the piece that I'm like super excited to meld with business, right?
Yeah.
There's some unnecessary suffering that happens because the business infrastructure is not there. That's also completely unnecessary. But I think an even bigger piece is the mental drama that we put ourselves through when we're struggling, when it's hard, when we've set things up incorrectly, or even as things are starting to look better. Like, how many times have we coached in the program about fear of success, right? Like about that exactly.
That was me. I've told you numerous times over, I'm more afraid of succeeding than I am of failing. Because at least with failing, like I can look back and say, okay, what's the lesson that I learned here? What can I improve on? And things like that. But I didn't know how to apply that to success. But there are just as many lessons, if not more, but there are just as many lessons to be learned with success. And hi, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, exactly. I think like I mean, it's not roses and butterflies on that side either. And I think there was so much fear for me. So I'll share some personal stuff. So for me, one of the biggest fears of success I had is, you know, if I make the money I want to make, like, will I abandon my husband, my family, right? Like, can I trust myself to do that? And interestingly enough, like, I mean, I've not shared this openly, but I am going through a divorce. It's been 6 months. I think it's fair game that I can talk about this. So we're going through a divorce right now. And the reason for my getting a divorce had nothing to do with money. So it's interesting because for so many years, I was like, I might leave if I make the money. And then guess what? I chose to leave. It had nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
And so for so long, I told myself that story. And, you know, like the number just kept getting bigger. Right. So it was like, well, when I make 10,000, when I make 3,000, when I make 5,000, when I make 10,000, and like the number just kept getting bigger because I didn't want to make that decision because I wasn't ready. But I think whenever we're tying something to another thing because we're afraid we're going to become successful it's just a way of delay. It's a tactic of delaying a decision, right? And two, like
analysis paralysis thing.
Exactly. And two, like look at, okay, well, what are your deal breakers, right? And then stand in that, right? Yeah. And for me, like that was a really interesting thing that happened in the last year. Because for so long, I was just terrified that, you know, if I made like all this money, it would happen. And when really in my gut, I knew it was just not right for me. I was just afraid to make the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, so there's, and that's another thing too. Like I was asked recently, like, hey, you're, you know, in going through divorce, like, is it going to be harder or easier, or how can I show up? And it's like, that has nothing to do with it, right? Like, it's not even about, like, if I made all of that reason for me not to show up, I wouldn't really be standing in impact. I would be standing in the circle of me. I wouldn't be standing in the circle of what do these people need.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of the coaching I do around sales is around that, right? If you're afraid of selling, if you're afraid of sales, it's because you're putting yourself in the center when really your client needs to go in the center of that customer success journey and the process.
Which was another big thing that you helped me work through, was the whole approach to sales. And what I loved about that was that you're helping us reframe everything. And okay, so it's not about us. We don't make it personal, because I think, especially as women, we do tend to take things so personally, and we make it about us, and we make, well, this person, or maybe it's not just women, but the personality types. Because that's always been one of my biggest things. It's like, when we were talking to Christina about, and she was saying how she always felt like she was one of the weird kids. That's how I felt too when I was younger. And, when we lived in California, I don't know, I was one of the small kids, so I didn't fit in with everybody, or as a tomboy, and I didn't fit in with the girls because I thought playing the girls sometimes was just stupid. And then we moved to DC. Again, I was always on the fringe of wherever it was that we were living, and I've always been drawn to that now, like for my business. That's who I want to work with, are the people on the fringe, or the people, the disenfranchised,
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like showing that that's possible, like if you're Hispanic, if you're not the white, beautiful, preppy girl, no, nothing wrong with it, right? But like,
absolutely not.
It's also, you can still be successful at it, right? Like it doesn't matter your obstacle. It could be external, right? Like it could be how you perceive yourself, honestly, because like that's what's inside, right?
The edge.
I kind of love the edge. Yeah, exactly. And like that is it. You don't have to follow any mold. Like when I teach niching down, it's always like, remember, we're doing internet online marketing. So like if you found 1,000 people in the world who are just as weird as you at loving this one weird thing, like you still have 1,000 like, I mean, 1,000 customers, or even 100 customers, which for most businesses is 100,000, is,
right.
$1 million business, depends on what you're offering. But, it's 100% okay for you to be yourself. And like that piece is really important to me, because I told myself that story, right? I told myself like, well, if I was like, more like, American white girl, I might be able to blah, blah, blah. Right? If I wasn't so strange, loving neurology and chess club, I might be able to do this. And it's so dumb, right? Like it's so dumb, the stories we tell ourselves.
Because you can't see behind me right now, maybe you can, but like the stuff that I have that's on my desk, it's on my bookshelf. Yes, I have all of like my psychology books. I have some autism books up there, but it's also covered in collectibles, because I like these strange little quirky things, and it's just who I am. I'm not making any attempt to hide that. And I think that too is that acceptance with yourself, and the way that you show up for yourself, it really reflects on how you're going to show up in the rest of your life. Because once you start to embrace that, whatever it is that makes you, there's no holding you back, because that's the biggest barrier.
Right.
And you don't need anybody else's approval.
Right.
But it's getting to that point, because it's tough.
Yeah. Totally. And that's where it becomes really the mind game, right? And that's that internal suffering. Like, are we replaying the story we were told? And sometimes guys, it was like one incident that you perceived incorrectly. Like it's like one sad incident that we make our life like a story around.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, yeah. And I love, like, also follow, it says Facebook user. I don't know if it's Allison, but Allison is really great at teaching this. Allison Fab, one of our fantastic and fabulous clients. And she talks about the messy middle, and she talks about being quirky and being yourself. Like, I love it. And she's inspired me a lot to just like lean into all the crazy, weird stuff that I love and share that, you know.
And I have to say too, is that Christina has been, I don't think I've told her this, but she's been hugely influential in that for me as well. I am a church-going Lutheran. And I'm very involved in the activities of church. But I also have on my desk right now, like, I have a meditation bowl. I'm wearing my Tree of Life Reiki necklace because it keeps me grounded. I have my oracle cards are sitting like right next to me. They're recharging, like literally recharging. I know they're paper, but they are in the sun because that's how I cleanse them. I'm waiting on a crystal set. So I'm just as like as much of a spiritual being, and watching and seeing Christina kind of just embrace that has really helped me. And I don't think I've told her that, so I hope she knows.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was so drawn to her because I did so much work with my background. Like, I was raised Catholic, and it was not, I mean, it was extreme. It was it is extreme. My parents are extreme diehard Catholics. Like, they pray the rosary every day, you know, diehard. And I, you know, in the career span that I went through, and I have shared this on other people's podcasts, but again, never shared it with you guys. And in the career progression that I went through, like, when I was working as a transplant coordinator, I was seeing death. Literally, I covered 26 hospitals in the area, and anytime anyone was close to brain dead or pronounced brain dead, I got a phone call. So what that meant is, you have to cope with that. Really, you have to find ways to understand that, but also like be intimately close with it. And so, one, I think that it helped me so much with like my skill and ability to talk to and communicate with people. They were also extremely difficult cases, like, which I like nerded out about every cell and every every like medication and every single titration we did. But at the same time too, like, going through that, I became atheist. Like, that was like the best way I could cope, was like completely turn the other way.
Yeah.
And I was pregnant with my son, and we went to visit these like limestone like caves in, oh my gosh, if I could remember, it's in New Mexico. And it's pretty famous. Like, you probably know it.
Carlsbad Caverns?
What?
Carlsbad Caverns?
I think so. Yeah. And so it's like limestone, and I'm looking at, and of course, you know, you learn chemistry in high school, but like, application is everything, right? But actually seeing the chemical composition, and how, for me, it was the moment of like, holy shit, that looks like an ABG, sort of, but it's not. And it's like so interesting that like, what is compatible with the life in an ABG and what is not compatible with life in an ABG is somehow in this rock. And then my life was blown. My brain was blown. And I was like, I gotta figure out more about what's happening here.
Revelations in the cavern.
And of course, it's like this super nerdy chemical thing that like causes me to like wake back up, right? But then that's when I woke up and I was like, what's going on? So I start going down like the sciencey side of it all, right? Like, for me, that's always been like my love, is like science, data. Like, I want to see the things, right? And so, and going down that rabbit hole, I did go into like learning about spirituality from a scientific like place, and it has been so fascinating, you guys. I don't know if you know this, but studies have shown, like, if you weigh a person at death and after death, they weigh different amounts, yet nothing is different except for the fact that they're dead. It is like, it is fascinating. Yeah, there's studies on this. It's really interesting. So it's like all of that kind of stuff has really opened my eyes to universe, source.
Yeah, absolutely.
I go to a like unity church, so it's all like Father, Mother, God. It's like non-dominational. We accept all religions. It's really interesting because we study like
Unitarian.
No, it's just unity.
Oh,
yeah, unity. Unitarian. I mean, there's Unitarian, but then there's unity. There's a difference. I think unity uses the word God, where Unitarian like doesn't even allow use of God. But like my pastor, it's like we'll study in the same sermon, like Buddhist teaching, Jewish, Catholic, like we do it all. It's really fascinating. And so I love that. And I've been open to all of it. And I also had a chance to work with Dr. Monica, who she's like, she has a doctorate in, what is it, in theology of religion or something really fascinating, but she also has a bunch of programs on money. So her program, I took her program called Women's Wealth and Worthiness, and it was fascinating, like the oppression of women through money, and really studying the history of that really woke me up a lot to, especially for Hispanic and minorities and African Americans, like the disenfranchisement of that. It was really big. So those are kind of some of the things that I've explored and really looked at that really allowed me, I think, to like really come full circle from that place. And also at the same time being super understanding and loving of someone, including yourself, right? When you go through a period where your beliefs are shaken up, where you like are unsure about yourself, right? And like all of that, like the whole full circle, because I've been on the gamut of it, right? But yeah, I mean, I do pull a card or two when I need it. I have a friend that sent me my first set of cards, and it's the only one I have, but it's called the Affirmators, and they're so cute and fun.
Oh, nice.
I love them. And I got to work with a spiritual, with a energy healer for over a year. And I have shared that. It's really beautiful. So yeah, we're all into all things woo and all around, like just accepting of everyone. That's really my philosophy.
I think that's super important, is the whole, it's acceptance, both within and without. And
right.
The Affirm reader, that must be Allison.
Yeah, it's probably
Allison.
Yeah. Awesome. So anything else that you think we should cover?
Well, if you have an impact goal for this year, what is it?
So I want to help. I don't have like an exact number, but like I want to help a lot more people just get to that 6-figure additional, right? Okay. So like 6 figures, I think it's like that North Star program stuff, right? When we talked about North Star program, like if we could get more people to have that program, it's going to be a life changer, because then from there, everything else is possible. Like we've had our North Star program and we really haven't deviated from that, even though we're past that point. And now it's like kind of fun and experimental, where we're like, well, do we want to do this?
Next?
What's next? Do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? And that's been really fun and exciting to look at what are the next things we want to do. And so I'd love to get, I hate to put a number on it because, whatever.
I don't think you should put a number on it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be like which for you is saying a lot because you love your numbers.
I do. But an impact goal does not need to be a number.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is just what you want it to be and how it's going to change people's lives.
Right.
And that kind of thing, which
Right.
I think is also hugely important because, like, you can't put numbers on certain things.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, especially with what's going on today with COVID and everything, it's like, I mean, really, that impact is so much more like helping, you know, a great group of people to do that, to add 6 figures is just going to be so moving during this time when, like, the world, I feel like, is going through what I went through 5 years ago with not being able to work and my daughter, right? And it's like, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to lean into this online atmosphere that is right here available for you? Or are you going to tell yourself you can't do it and unempowering stories and give up?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So thank you guys so much. I hope that you enjoyed this interview slash
The background story. For
background
anybody
story. All the secrets revealed. We talked about all the internal secrets up to, like, you know, all the religious stuff and oops, hold on, what's going on?
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. My computer was doing something funny. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, reach out. But again, remember, you're the impact-driven entrepreneur. It is about you and what you're going to make happen in your life. What?
We're just helping you get there.
Yeah, we're just helping you get there.
You
So
have the impact, you have the vision. We're just helping you implement it and get it out to the world. That's what we're doing.
awesome. So thank you so much, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Bye.
Bye.